Hey everyone, welcome back. It is Igon. Thanks for checking out another episode of Esports Analysis. As we hop into today's video, we are on board with Formal. He drops a 40 bomb on this gun runner Hardpoint, and they're playing Paris. So this will give you a little bit of an idea in terms of what Paris looks like going into their home event tomorrow. Just ahead of time, I'll tell you that over the course of the 5 Hardpoints, I believe Chicago won 4 of them. They only lost 1. I think the Petrograd was the one they lost. It was either the Petrograd or no, it was the Ramaza. The Ramaza Chicago lost. They just haven't looked that great on Ramaza as a whole the last few weeks, but hopefully that's something that they're working at and trying to get better at. So as we hop into the actual analysis of this one, obviously we're on P1, and if you are Chicago, then you're doing everything that you can to try to flip to P2. With that being said, I am going to let us listen in a little bit more. So every time I see something that's key and critical, I'm going to pause it. I'm going to break it down. But with this, I figured we only have, this is the first time that we've really seen Chicago scrim post CDL Minnesota. So I'm interested to see what they're talking about, how team comms are going, what they're looking to do strategy wise and all of that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to turn up the audio, and let's listen in to the Chicago team comms.
I got one hill.
Quick dead, quick dead, quick dead.
I got my
Quick
track.
hill.
Very self in hill.
Yeah.
Coming, we're coming.
There's 2 in time.
I jumped
Red door.
out.
Back right. Dude, oh.
Absolutely dead.
Kill me in the back. He's back door, back door, back door.
I just got out.
Just real quick, we'll bring up our mini-map for the first time today, and Chicago's been doing such a good job recently of whether it's P1 here or they do a really nice job leaving P2 on Ramaza also, but rather than send, we've talked about this a couple times, 1 or 2 people up top, 1 person in the middle, a couple people down low, rather than doing that, if they do that, there's a chance that they lose all of those gun battles, but as of recently, they've just been flooding one side, and you've seen right now Formal on screen, he's at the back of P2, but they did a nice job of being able at least to get to the bottom of the map, because once they're at the bottom of the map, this becomes a bottom of the map versus top of the map thing, right? So Paris will spawn up top, Chicago would spawn down underneath, and then they would just battle as they try to get back inside of P2. So just wanted to point that out because they've been doing a really nice job of flooding together and everybody pushing at the same time.
Oh, in the back shocks.
Play kills, play kills, play kills. We're good. I'm going back right. I'm going back right. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm back right too.
Yeah, red door,
Shots
red
on
door.
the truck, on the truck.
Truck dead, truck
Red
dead.
door, red door, and side door.
He's red door. Red door tagged. Red door tagged. Two.
Crossing
He
one
ran
door.
out. He's pinching back door. Pinched back door. He's laying down back door. Quick, quick, quick.
I'm red
I'm
door.
weak, dead.
Block crates, block crates.
I'm dead with red door dead. More window.
That's
We
your
got me
flash
front,
or what?
dude. Fuck. He
What
got me
side door?
front. Kids is already new. Kids is already new.
I'm
They
leaving
hit
you.
ramp on me.
Oh.
Then
Are we
See
putting
him?
this front heavy?
another one in the back.
pitch.
Yeah.
And you can't be serious, brother.
Guys, go for
You're just
front.
walking in there.
Yeah, I went to the
Interesting challenge there, but this is one thing. Again, I think the last time that we went on board with Formal was like a week or so ago, and the one thing about watching Formal is that he's usually that last person in the hill. So like on the rotation there from P2 to P3, we couldn't quite see what was happening because he's the person that's getting that last 13 or 14 seconds of scrap time, but you can tell just based on that spawn right there from Formal that they did flip that spawn. They have P5 spawns, so from here on out, you want to do the best you can if you're Chicago to get time inside of P3, contest in P4, and then really blow this thing or break this thing open when it comes back to P5, even though they're down by about 40 points, but that's not all that big of a deal considering where they're spawning with the next few maps coming up.
1 shot, 2 lock, 2 front, 1 shot. Nice, you're done.
Nice.
Come on, new
I'm
guys.
going oil, I'm going
I'm
oil.
pitching.
I'm waiting for you there.
Going
I'm
oil.
sitting in
I
the,
got one.
I'm sitting
I'm
their
just
side in
playing
the
the cut, I'm
corner.
playing the
Yeah,
cut.
you're good. You're
Fight.
good.
Are they pushing an old?
On front new.
Ah, damn it.
Wow,
I'll hit old. I'll
loggers.
kill this guy.
Play my life. I need
An old,
help.
an old weak.
Yeah.
I'm
Hold that.
helping you.
I'm helping new too.
Responding green
I'm
here.
pitching deep.
I got
Come
you
on.
mid
Close
to
left,
mid.
Track,
no,
track,
back
track,
right.
track.
Mining back right.
Bathroom
Is that
stairs.
right train? You know what? Close.
Every back right push.
Pick up left, pick up left.
Right, dead,
I
dead,
got you. I
dead.
got you. Go.
More close, dead. I'm 1 shot. Yo, you.
Dill, I'm
Let's
helping
go,
you. Dill, I'm helping you.
You
Dill.
hurt, you hurt.
Right
Dead,
side,
dead,
right
dead,
side.
dead.
Nice.
Nice, good jump.
Four. One left.
Four. He's back right. He's gonna be back right. Matt, preempt.
I'm not there.
I'm
I'm going.
just to kind of pause and reset just a tiny bit here as we're progressing through P4. Remember, midway through P3, it was a 70-20 ball game. So with that knowledge in mind, when we watched Formal come up off of spawn there, he spawned back P5 as he was approaching P3. They didn't even have control of P3 yet. So they were able to get control of P3, get time inside of P3. They were able to get the majority of the time inside of P4, and they still have the spawns for back 5. So even though they're down by about 20 points or so, it's really not all that bad considering where they started the first 2 sets of rotations.
He went top window, Alex.
Going A
Not
down.
that one, front window.
Come back to hill.
Back right, Den.
I got P3, P3 dead.
I want to dead.
Formal looks really good for what it's worth.
I'm holding it then.
One top hit.
Cross mat.
I'm looking woods.
Got one
I'm
here.
looking woods.
One more.
Flanking that guy?
Oh, there.
Two hitting, 3 hitting left.
Getting
3
on
hitting
top.
left.
I'm getting on
I
top.
got
One
top.
D4, D4,
I
D4.
I'm in now, I'm in
now.
Silo.
I spawned behind them, P3 guys.
Silo dead. One more dirt. Top dirt ramp. Top
P3
dirt ramp.
one shot Dylan. Dead.
Dirt ramp. One shot Dens.
Oh,
Dead P3.
We're
More
spawning
hill.
P3 still.
That's my bad, brother.
Jump.
One still dirt ramp. Right.
P3.
That's my
Right. Forest. Dens.
Where's the
one's green.
I have no
dead.
ammo.
Oh.
Green. One shot dead.
dead?
Dirt ramp, dead.
Back right. Nice.
I have no ammo.
I'm gonna try to work.
So this right here, let's go ahead, let's pause, let's bring up the mini map because this was a really fantastic hold here out of Chicago. We saw a few times that Formal was just sitting back here on this back building, and he would go from watching Coil over here to pushing up just a tiny bit and watching Dirt Ramp. So essentially, the way that he's been slaying, he was able to control the bottom side of the map by himself. They had one person sitting in hill, and then the rest of them were just pushed up inside of P3, and as this hill has come to a close, now they're pushing out mid again. So I wish that we were in Codcaster so we could see exactly where everybody's pushing. It does look like they're making a concerted effort to hit the bottom of the map here to try to flip for P2, but even if they don't flip for P2, the way that the rest of the first set of rotations went for them, they ended up being in pretty good shape. So we'll see how the rotations go from here as they head into the second set of rotations.
Enter right.
I'm in bathrooms, guys.
Could be inner crates.
One hit.
Upgrades.
P3 on one side.
Upgrades weak.
He's outside green right now.
Outside green on me.
I'm just holding back bathrooms
Top
door.
crates in you. Top crates in you.
Top crate and in green too.
Just notice again that Envoy's still using the Uzi on this map. I'm interested to see what his score is like at the end of this one because when he did it in the tournament at CDL Minnesota, he played fairly well. So we'll see if that continues against Paris here in this scrim.
I'm up on
Yeah,
wheel.
top.
Vent is-
I'm going top crates.
vents.
Could be bathroom. They could be bathroom.
They're gonna be all over you.
Oh my God,
Green,
shots
green,
weak and green.
green.
Shots weak and green.
Still
Yeah.
green. One's half wall.
Shock push that. Luca dead. One half wall.
No, I just want
Dead.
to
One more shock. Shock's there.
Dead in
Yeah, in green. I'm one shot.
Green dead.
Should I hold right now?
Weak and
I
green.
have
Weak
one
and green.
green.
Two wall bang me.
Fuck, dude.
Right.
One's going half wall too.
One's
I
dirt
can't get
ramp,
time yet.
dirt ramp.
The other thing to notice of right here is that they're really doing more damage control and map positioning control than they were trying to get time inside of P1, right? If we go ahead and we pause this and we bring up the mini map again, we saw that Formal, so when he died, he came up off P2, he went down underneath, and then he went top crates. And really, he was just holding down this area of the map. And as soon as they got kills mid-map, then he was able to transfer and he was able to get his vision P1. But you have noticed that nobody really pushed P1, right? Because they don't care so much about the time that's happening inside of P1. They just want to make sure that Paris isn't getting that time and they're holding map control for P2. So like right here, when Formal comes up off of spawn, he spawns up here, top side of the map, and he's going to work back into P2, and he's going to work back probably to this minecart back here and try to hold this left-hand push, the flood from Paris on the bottom side of the map.
I got Luca and Old.
One more hill. Half wall.
Make sure we get
someone
someone
top
water.
and dirt
Middle tracks.
And crate.
Half
Got
health, middle tracks.
Looking mid track.
Push me
Yeah,
hill.
dead.
Bathroom.
Spawn
I'm
water
playing
now?
red train.
Yeah, I have a
water.
trophy on you, Dylan. I'm
Water
sitting here
close,
close.
right?
Yeah, I want your
No, what do you actually
That's
water
my
rim? That's water rim.
I'm trying to hold right.
Smoke me
out
out.
dead. Yeah, I got
There's
one.
one here.
No, we're in smoke. He's
Yeah, he's right
running
there,
by you.
There's two.
Red door, red door.
Back left, guys.
Back
Back left, guys.
back door.
Back door, back door, yeah, back door.
Spawn deep, spawn deep.
Back door, dead. Dead side, dead side. Red train, backward train.
Flash him.
I
He's
have
flash.
back. I have
The one
back.
front.
I have
So that right there might not have been the best setup for Chicago if they had time. I know that Formal kind of got caught inside the hard point, but that's not really where he's the best, right? In this setup right here, you really do want that main AR over on the left-hand side of the map, right there where he's looking. If he could get to that train car and contest from there, so contest the push on the bottom side of the map from there, we saw Skies be super successful at that the entire weekend. So maybe just a little adjustment here or there, but unbelievable three-piece there. That three-piece was essentially like a 20-point swing, right? Because when that three-piece started, there were still 10 seconds left in the current hard point. So the fact that Paris doesn't get that 10 seconds and Chicago does, that's a 20-point swing. And it doesn't seem like that much, but man, it seems like Formal is hardly missing any shots at all today. He looks really good.
I don't see one under short. I don't see one under short.
No, you're good. You're good. One more
I don't
challenging.
know where he went then.
One
Okay.
shot, kids.
Gonna be place flat.
He
Gonna be
was
place
trying to
flat.
hold green then.
Throw a nade over.
In my heady.
I hit him with the nade. I hit him with the nade.
Ismic. Challenging weak. Nice.
Another kid.
Dirt
Go on me. Go on me.
Right
Sit up. One more hill.
I got a pinch.
I'm
One
alive.
shot. I'm one shot. I got needed.
That got me.
I got two. There's one more
Dead on
time.
time.
Only one time.
Hey,
One shot,
Bryson,
girl.
hold on, hold on.
You're
Guess
okay.
the flood though. There's 20 now.
That's all
I'm
you
fighting
guys.
hold. I'm fighting hold. I'm fighting hold.
Fighting hold too.
Is that pressing?
Box.
So a little bit of a different strategy, different setup right here. As it rotated from P2 to P3, first set of rotation, Chicago was able to flip. They were able to get behind P5 and get that P5 spawn. Here, they weren't able to get that initially, and then as they pushed through B-Dom, that top side of the map, they also weren't able to get through there. So now things have flipped a little bit. Let's see how they progress into P4 and eventually up trying to get map position for P5.
I don't see kids. I don't see kids. I
Kids
don't
in
see
here.
kids.
Kids in
That's
here.
three. That's three. That's three. Press on
Enter
set. Press on
again.
three. Let's just open. 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 We're gonna flip. I think that's all.
Dirt ramp 20.
Nah, we didn't.
Yeah, we got half flips. Half flips. One's gonna be behind us.
Yeah, there's 20 P3.
Yeah,
20
we're still
P3.
spawning water.
Gonna be in on me. Gonna be in on me.
Wait, one's behind us, sir, or something.
No, we can.
He might have hit new. He might have hit new.
Two in the back. I got one.
Yeah, we should go right now.
Then I'm come back.
In bathrooms.
Bathrooms, then.
Flank
Another
in
one in
bathrooms. Flank in
This one
bathrooms.
half
Two
flip.
bathrooms. Two
Bathroom
front.
I half flip. I'll get your bathroom.
Going for us. Going for us.
Yeah.
More inner crates.
Yeah,
Inner crates.
I'm
Inner crates.
shot.
Inner crates.
Mini middle.
Dead.
Nice.
Or they're trying to play for me. They're trying to play for me, guys.
Here. I'm throwing Chovy on this map.
Back up. Dead. I'm saying
Green.
line.
Green.
Green and
I'm nading green. I'm nading
Back
green.
green. Back green. Back green.
Fucked up green.
He's on the box. He's trying to.
So
throw
real
Chovy.
quick,
Dead.
let's stop this. Let's bring up the minimap because you noticed that here at P4, when Formal pushed up, he pushed up and he was just playing this side of the map. And essentially what that does is he's pushed up just far enough to where as Paris comes up off of spawns, they're not going to spawn inside of P5 on their teammates. They're going to spawn up more towards P3. So as Chicago's SMGs come up off of P4 and they hit mid, now you can try to get in gun battles right here. So even though Formal wasn't pushed up, he wasn't inside of P5, he didn't flip, anything like that, just him being pushed up is enough to have an impact on where Paris is spawning and what happens in P5 after that.
Dead. 8 on dead.
Two back left.
One
Two back
right
left. Two
now,
back left.
one
Two
right
back
now.
left.
Far back left.
In green, absolute
green
shots. Doc's in
Probably dead.
green still.
I'm blocking
Play
close
light.
spawns.
Yeah, I'm here with you.
Oh.
They're gonna spawn deep out.
Doc's in green and one's.
I can kill the guy for us. I can kill the guy for
Oh,
us.
he's forest. Fuck.
Wheels dead. Wheels dead. Wheels dead.
Wheel.
I'm waiting.
Yo, they're spawning for us. They're
I need
spawning
help, I
for
need
us.
help.
I'm coming.
Back.
The whole
fuck.
P3 behind.
Back
hold
left.
it.
Back left.
I'm about to slide in.
Slide,
You
I'm
don't
about to
see
slide in.
what's
That's a really nice job there from Formal of just realizing that his teammates, you heard Arcity saying that they're going to spawn Forest. Well, as soon as Formal comes up off a spawn, he pushes P4, he gets that kill on Luca from behind, and if he's Forest, then he knows that Paris can't be spawning there, so they must be spawning behind him. Now, from there on out, they'd probably spawn somewhat middle of the map, but he turns around, gets this person off of spawn. So that's just a heady realization that RC was saying that they were spawning up top, which means that Paris must be spawning Forest, but if he's at Forest, they can't spawn there, it's blocked, so he turns around and gets a kill from there, which is why, as we go back to this is why he's looking mid-map, right? Because if B-Dom spawn is blocked and Forest spawn is blocked, they have to be spawning middle or behind one of those two spawns. It looks like, based off what I'm seeing in the minimap in the top left-hand corner, that they're spawning up towards B-Dom.
Got one.
Coming. Only one guy hill. Only one guy hill. It's one behind you, P3. So.
Another one P3.
Another one, guys.
Dead.
It's only one guy hill. It's only one guy hill.
Here and behind us, Forest.
What the fuck
It's a
was
fucking
that?
nade, bro.
Oh wow.
I just spawn killed you guys.
Spawn killed me.
I was holding P3, dick.
I'm standing in boxes, guys.
Looks like Envoy threw a really bad nade right there and got 2 on his team.
Come here, front door.
Top
Front
three.
door, come here. Is they down?
Come here, Dom weak. Luca. He's
Hit
sitting in the
gold.
corner.
Never mind. I spawned forest.
There's one going for us right now. Forest going right now.
Mac.
Right, or left.
They're all going for us right now.
Green. Green.
Going
Green.
back left,
Green.
forest
Dead.
dead.
Kinda hard.
If you're looking at this from Paris's point of view, they've done everything that they need to do to get themselves back in it, right? Even though they're still down by about 20-ish points, if they can get time inside of P1 and flip the map, there's still an avenue for them to win, right? So it looks like they might be pushed out right there. I don't know if they, let's see where Formal, okay, so Formal did spawn in P5. So that means that Paris was successful at flipping. So at this point in time, all they have to do is just make sure that they don't lose on P1, and Paris is set up pretty well to win this game.
Jackson, he went you.
Bathroom.
No in front, bathroom, kill me.
Oh, bathroom. One shot on hill. One shot on hill. One shot on hill.
Gonna lose your full.
Nice shot. One more. Bathroom or crate?
Got me crates. Inner crates. He's going out. Rock.
Oh, I fucked up.
Rock right now.
Bathroom,
Dead. Rock right now.
bathroom.
Dead.
We're good. 20
Rock,
seconds. 20 seconds.
I'll kill you. You
Yep.
dead, you
More
dead.
inner crates on you. Inner
Crates.
crates on you.
Bathrooms, inner crates.
Inner crates on you.
Crates on me.
Bathroom stands. Fuck.
Crate got me. Good job. One more
Bathroom's
there.
full health
Colin.
right side. We can still win
Dead. I died to a nade.
Back right of me. Zed.
Can't win off this anymore, guys.
Inner crate.
Take our time.
No back right.
You just heard Arcides right there say that they can't win on that anymore. So if you're Paris, it'll be tough, but you have P2 spawns, you have control of the map. Let's see if they can slay out and end up winning this one.
I got
Nice,
kids.
two.
Back
One more
right.
deep right.
Yeah, deep right.
Laying down.
I'm
Absolute.
being
Absolute.
annoying left. I'm being
Behind truck.
annoying
Behind
left.
truck. There's gotta be on truck, guys.
Behind the
Uh,
truck.
come
Dead.
back,
Behind
come
truck. Dead.
back,
Behind truck. Dead. One more hill.
Seth.
I'm looking side door.
No in the
One side
back,
door.
weak. He's just sitting there.
I think
Front
front
door,
door.
front
Back
door.
door kids. Back door kids. Back door kids.
Guys,
I
we
got
need to
one,
do
one,
something
one.
together.
Top.
Zed,
Top
window.
cat.
They're spawning
Yeah.
out. They're
I
spawning
got
out
two.
lockers.
Wait, I didn't get him in the back.
They're spawning in the back. Spawning in the back, guys.
Oh, he jumped behind you. He's C-Dom. Close right.
Too close,
He
right?
pushed, dude. He pushed forward.
Dead.
Back door dead and no one in the hill. Back door, back door.
Come on, forward.
Back door weak. Dead.
Oh, I needed you.
Side door,
Yeah,
they're gonna
side.
be side hard.
Coming in front.
So if you're Chicago there, all you needed was one break. And as you look at the kill feed on the left-hand side of the screen, they were able to get it. Priesta got a 2-piece. Arcides and Formal also got kills inside the hill. And that was all it took. But overall, this was a really close map. And even though Formal and Chicago had a pretty good first and second set of rotation, it probably shouldn't even have went that far. As it progressed through the second set of rotations, they kind of lost P3. They didn't have a good P4. They didn't have spawns at all for P5. So things definitely could have been better. But either way, it's still a victory. And this is a scrim over Paris that they did win in terms of the 5 hard points. So as we look at the scoreboard right here, Formal was 38 and 23. Luca was also 39 and 32. So a couple of good scores there out of Formal and Luca. Let's see if Paris can continue that tomorrow as we get kicked off with the CDL Paris Homestead. So with that, guys, if you're new around here, you enjoy this sort of content, I put out brand new videos covering the CDL every single day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Any comments, put them down below. I love the comments, love the interactions. Leave a like before you head on the way. It really helps out the channel. And with that, thank you so much. I will catch you in tomorrow's upload.